It's time for Real World and Real People, and I've got Ehsan Ahmed with me, who is a property guru. I've been reading your notes earlier, Ehsan. You started off renting from a landlord. Now you've sort of switched roles and you're renting properties out, advising people about how to rent rooms and properties. I want to ask you a question, because we have a housing crisis in this country where people can't get housing, they struggle to find a room or a flat or whatever, and I want you to solve it in the next 8 minutes.
I'd love to. Look, I think it's quite a simple solution, Lee. I think we at Right Room, we're doing things slightly different. So we're not like traditional agents who only focus on whole lettings of whole properties. We actually have a core focus on rooms, and we found that a lot of landlords, especially older gentlemen who have rooms in their houses, vacant rooms in their houses, are coming to us to help them get lodgers. And that's something that over the years used to be the norm previously, but more so now it's becoming frowned upon, which doesn't really make sense to me. So as we've gone into this niche, we found that by carefully vetting the tenants and hopefully getting a good relationship between the landlord and the lodger, the house becomes or creates more of a community feel, and it does two things. So for the landlord, it gives them extra income, which is obviously much needed in given the cost of living crisis, etc. And for the lodger and the landlord, there's a sense of a community. So there's the potential of a relationship where they can become friends, and hopefully.
You said earlier about this is how it used to be back in the day, and it did. You used to have a landlord or landlady, and you'd have 3 or 4 lodgers in the house. Now we sort of, especially in Ashfield where I live, we have these HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy. I'm not a big fan of those because the landlord doesn't live there. So they put in 4 or 5 blokes in who are not always behaving themselves, and they create problems in the local community on the street.
Correct.
But the idea of a landlord, a respected landlord, with 3 or 4 or 5 professional people in who go to work and pay the taxes and pay the dues, that sounds like a good idea to me.
It is, I mean, so far it's worked a treat, and we've got many examples of successful relationships that have come about as a result of that. And so far we've never had an issue where there's been a problematic relationship. And that's predominantly down to the fact that we vet the tenants quite well. And the landlord gets to meet who's going to be moving in, and ultimately they have the final say.
That's good.
So we manage that relationship.
So you got the landlords making a few bob as well, which is good. And also the tenants, because obviously it's going to be much cheaper to rent a room
100%.
Rather than rent a full flat or a house. It gives them a chance to save for the deposit or to get their own place eventually.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we all know that the cost of living crisis is real. Inflation is through the roof, and it's becoming harder and harder for the younger generation to go out and buy homes. So in order to move out of their parents' house, they have to go and live in a room. And that's the solution where they can hopefully save a few bob, like you said.
And what sort of security of tenancy have the lodgers got?
So it's predominantly a lodger's agreement, and it varies depending on what the landlord requires. So typically it's either 6 months or 12 months, but we do leave it quite flexible. And what I mean by that is, like, if after a couple of months mutually it doesn't work out, there's no strings attached. We don't force them to stay in that property over a long period of time, and effectively it has to be mutual. The relationship has to be mutual, and both of them should feel comfortable.
Well, it's a big thing, though, isn't it, Sam, to open your house up to strangers. And some people would say it is a bit of a gamble to do that, but if it works, it can work really well for both partners, can't it, really?
Absolutely. I mean, especially what we've seen is that a lot of the living landlords, they'll have maybe a separate kitchen, a small kitchenette in the house, which means that if they've got a separate bathroom, kitchenette and a room, there is a segregation of facilities, which means that they don't get into each other's way too much. Obviously where the residents are predominantly working or students, they've got their own life.
Yeah.
So there's only certain times they'll see.
So it all sounds good. It sounds like you're doing okay. What sort of barriers have you had whilst you've been doing this?
Barriers to entry has more so come as we've grown. So as our name has got out there, and we've started to.
And what's your company name again?
It's Right Room.
Right Room.
Yeah, Right Room. Yeah.
Sounds a bit like Right Move.
It's funny you say that. So recently we've had a little bit of a run-in with Right Move.
Yeah.
And who've sort of seen our growth. Who've seen we get quite a lot of positive reviews on Google. They've reached out to us with, effectively a cease and desist, which is basically saying that, our name is too similar to theirs and our branding is similar to theirs, etc.
But I will tell you this, Ehsan, that we have contacted Rightmove. GB News has contacted them for a comment on this and they declined to comment. But yeah, you can carry on.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, I feel like we as a company, we've been registered, trademarked since 2021.
Yep.
And our branding and our operation is completely different to theirs.
Yeah, I mean, you're renting rooms out, aren't you?
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
In people's houses, they're renting flats and properties out.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
I don't see what the problem
And not just that, I mean, we're an agency, they're a portal.
Yeah.
So we're in a completely different niche. And our branding's nothing like theirs. So yeah, we've not heard nothing back. And to be honest with you,
Perhaps you should write to them and get them to change their name.
Yeah.
That seemed fair, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if an aspiring landlord rang you or came knocking on your door, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Okay, so I think with each landlord, the advice cannot be the same.
Okay.
It will be bespoke to their needs and what they're looking to do. Perhaps they're a first-time landlord who's got one property and that's all they want. In which case, they may want something hands-off. They just want to completely just get rid of the headache and the hassles of dealing with tenants, which is something we can do. Or there may be a landlord who's got a portfolio of properties or wants to grow their property. So our service is bespoke depending on the landlord, and each landlord gets a tailor-made service depending on where they want to be and where they are currently.
Yeah. What about insurance? Obviously, need some special insurance for this.
Insurance-wise, I mean, you have your standard building insurance, and then tenants who are in the property can have their own contents insurance. So it's not massively different, to be honest.
I'm currently looking for a flat in London.
Yeah.
I've been living in a hotel for 4.5 years now. I'm getting a little bit fed up of doing that. So I'm looking for a room somewhere. So I might come knocking on your door.
Please do.
Ehsan, thanks for that.
Pleasure. Very nice to meet you.
Coming up next, we've got right versus left.